Joaquín Guzmán Loera, better known by the nickname El Chapo, is a legend of the Mexican drug trade. At one time, he led the Sinaloa Cartel, and at the peak of his power, he was said to earn $3 billion a year. El Chapo controlled roughly half of Mexico's drug trafficking, owned a couple of yachts, a fleet of airplanes, a private jet, a diamond-encrusted pistol, and even a private zoo with tigers, crocodiles, and panthers. He didn't come to wealth and power overnight. He climbed the cartel ladder step by step, killing, maiming, and bribing, leaving behind a massive trail of crimes. So it's no surprise that, in the end, a reward of $5 million was offered for his capture. In total, El Chapo was arrested and sent to prison 3 times, and twice he managed to escape. But after his last arrest in 2016, he was extradited to the United States into a maximum security prison, from which no one has ever escaped. Guys, I've created my Telegram channel, don't be shy. Follow the link in the description and in the pinned comment. And today I want to tell you how El Chapo is serving his sentence, and also a bit about this mysterious prison. El Chapo was first arrested in Guatemala in 1993. By then, he was already a well-known criminal, because he had started trafficking drugs at a very young age. He worked for Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, the legendary leader of the Guadalajara cartel, and the so-called godfather of modern cartels. When Felix Gallardo was arrested in 1989, El Chapo saw a perfect opportunity to build his own cartel and become the new leader of Mexico's narco mafia. And in the end, that's exactly what he did. So in 1993, El Chapo was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. But in 2001, after Mexican authorities decided to extradite him to the United States, he escaped hiding inside a laundry cart and then inside a laundry truck. He pulled it off by bribing prison staff with around $2.5 million. El Chapo stayed on the run for 13 years, until he was arrested again in Mazatlan in 2014. He was sent to a maximum security prison in Mexico, but monstrous corruption and total chaos allowed him to escape once more, this time through a 1.5 kilometer tunnel, dug by his people at a depth of 20 meters beneath the prison, leading directly into his cell. But in 2016, El Chapo was arrested again. This time, he was extradited to the United States about a year later, because authorities feared yet another escape. In this video, you can see El Chapo during the extradition when he was in an American airport. Look closely at the terrified expression on his face. That was fear of the future. He understood it was the end of his entire operation, and that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. This was no longer Mexico. You can't just slip away that easily. Later, he was found guilty on multiple charges related to his leadership role in the Sinaloa Cartel. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years, with no possibility of early release, at ADX Florence in the state of Colorado. On the 19th of July, 2019, El Chapo arrived in the cell where he remains to this day. This prison has housed and still houses criminals such as Theodore Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, who mailed explosive devices. By the way, he died on the 10th of June, 2023. Ramzi Youssef is also associated with this world, an extremist linked to the 1993 World Trade Center bombing on the 26th of February, 1993. Richard Reed is also there, a terrorist who tried to blow up an airplane with explosives hidden in his shoe. Jokart Sarnaev is there as well, responsible for the bombing at the Boston Marathon on the 15th of April, 2013. Terry Nichols is also mentioned in this context, involved in the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. And they are colleagues from the same criminal world to like Alfredo Beltran-Leyva, a leader of the Beltran-Leyva cartel and a former rival of Guzman, and many other well-known high-level inmates considered extremely dangerous and prone to escape. So this place is, in every way, designed for holding El Chapo. Now let's talk about the conditions in which El Chapo serves his sentence. First, he spends 23 hours a day in a soundproof solitary confinement cell measuring about 3.5 by 2 meters. Inside the cell there is a table, a stool, and a bed almost entirely made of concrete. There is also a toilet built into the wall and floor, which can be shut off if it becomes clogged. There is a shower that runs on a timer and turns on 3 times a week to prevent flooding, and a sink designed without a potentially dangerous faucet. In the cell, there is a mirror made of polished steel fixed to the wall, and electric lighting that can only be turned off remotely. There is also a window about 110 centimeters wide and 120 centimeters tall design so that El Chapo cannot know his exact location. Through it, Guzmán could see only the sky and the roof, making escape planning almost impossible. Food is meager. Meals are delivered to his cell on schedule. After being checked sometimes with the help of specially trained dogs, his only hour of free time happens under the watchful eyes of multiple guards. During that hour, he is taken out for a walk in handcuffs and shackles. The walk takes place in a concrete pit resembling an empty swimming pool. This is also done so that he cannot determine his precise location inside the facility. In that pit, he cannot run or jump, but he is allowed to do some physical exercises. During the COVID period, these walks were almost completely canceled, and El Chapo spent nearly all his time in the cell. Later, they allowed up to 3 hours a week if the inmate deserves it. Sometimes, if a prisoner qualifies, he may be allowed short phone calls about 15 minutes, twice a month. But El Chapo is not permitted that. As for approved technology in the cell, Joaquín is allowed a small black and white television, which mostly broadcasts religious and educational programs at strictly assigned times. And even that television is available only if he demonstrates good behavior. For a long period of time, El Chapo can also read books and magazines, again strictly censored. On the other hand, televisions and books are almost useless for Guzmán because he does not understand English. ADX Florence is the highest security prison level in the United States. It was built in 1994 and began operating in January of 1995. Its second name is Supermax. The decision to build this prison was made after an incident in 1983 at the federal prison in Marion, when members of the Aryan Brotherhood killed 2 employees of the facility. After that, the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Norman Carlson, proposed creating a new institution to isolate the most dangerous, uncontrollable prisoners. In order to ensure security, Florence was meant to be made impossible to escape, a place where there would be more guards than inmates, a place with strict rules and a regime that would not allow prisoners to escape or harm anyone. That's why this prison is often called the Alcatraz of the Rocky Mountains. Only about 375 inmates are held there. That is very few, considering how many resources the state invests in maintaining it. The prison is packed with cameras and motion sensors. In front of El Chapo's cell, there is even a pressure pad built into the floor that immediately signals the control room if he steps on it during an attempted escape. In total, the prison has about 1,400 steel doors with remote control. Staff in the control center monitor Guzmán 24 hours a day and can activate an alarm button that immediately locks down all doors in the facility if there is any suspicion of an escape attempt. The Supermax is surrounded by watchtowers with guards, several rows of barbed wire fencing almost 4 meters high, and dozens of heavily armed officers patrolling the perimeter. So I think El Chapo is not going to escape anytime soon. Researchers claim that about 1/3 of inmates at Florence Supermax suffer from severe mental illnesses due to spending an extremely long time in solitary confinement. In the remaining 2/3, there may also be milder mental health problems. In a lawsuit filed in 2012 against ADX Florence, it was claimed that years of isolation and near total lack of human contact seriously damaged inmates' social skills and their ability to adapt. Some prisoners living in near complete isolation fall into despair and psychological breakdowns. Some self-harm, and 8 people have even died by suicide. El Chapo also wrote letters and complained through his lawyers that, because of being held in Supermax, he suffers from headaches, memory loss, muscle spasms, stress, and depression. He claimed he is treated badly and cruelly, and that he suffers psychological and health problems because of it. I pray that this court intervenes. He wrote, "I am excluded from any verbal contact or communication with other inmates. I have no contact with people except when guards put on and remove my shackles." He also complained that, when he arrived in the United States, he was not allowed to speak with his wife. He said his blood pressure rose, causing headaches and anxiety, and that sometimes he forgets things. He also wrote that they give him too little food and he often remains hungry. He complained that even though he is under constant, round-the-clock surveillance, guards regularly come to search his cell and touch his belongings. He complained that he sleeps poorly because the light and noisy air conditioners are always on. He also complained that guards constantly talk in the corridor, which prevents him from resting. But it should be said that not all prisoners in this facility are serving life sentences or are monstrous criminals. Many are transferred there due to disciplinary violations in other prisons. Because of attacks on guards or other inmates, they are sent to ADX Florence for correction, serve a certain period, and with exemplary behavior they gradually receive more privileges. They can be moved to general units, where they may have contact with other inmates, eat in shared areas, take walks, and so on. But El Chapo will not get that. He is permanently locked in solitary confinement in a closed block. During the COVID period, he was prohibited from meeting with lawyers, and also from seeing his twin daughters, who used to come regularly for visits. It is currently unknown whether he has any contact with them now. His lawyers continue to fight to obtain more humane conditions for him. El Chapo filed an appeal against his prison sentence, but on the 25th of January, 2022, a federal appeals court in New York rejected the appeal and left the sentence in place for leading a multi-million-dollar organization involved in illegal drug trafficking. As D Special Agent Ray Donovan said, thousands of people died or were killed by order of the Sinaloa Cartel and by El Chapo personally. So yes, he does not leave his cell. It is boring. It is monotonous. It is an everyday routine. It is very grim. But the difference is this: he is alive. And that means he can still do many things, and like many of his victims died, it's hard to disagree. And what do you think? Does El Chapo deserve any softening of punishment or improvement of conditions? It's clear he will never be free, and that is absolutely fair. But what about everything else? Write your opinion in the comments, because El Chapo is a cartel boss on whose conscience lie thousands of lives that he destroyed.